Pencil Pow. Why, hello there, art venturers. In this episode, we are going to be learning to draw the figure walking, not as an animation, but as a still image. This is just something that I did for practice while I was figuring this out. But I'll show you what we'll plan to do is actually just focus on two key points in the walk cycle. So let's go over to this illustration over here. And before I get deeper into this, I wanted to mention that I have begun to offer one-on-one customized art mentoring. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check out the link in the description. So when it comes to walking, there's actually a lot of subtlety. So I started with this. I'm doing a whole series of dynamic figure drawing, like figures in different actions. And so I started with walking because I thought that's the least exaggerated, so it should be the simplest, right? But it's actually the subtleties of it is what makes it complex. So let me take away this layer so you can just see these guys walking. And so I think like the next one I'm going to do is running. Actually, that I imagine is going to be a lot easier. But I still wanted to make a video on this and kind of share what I've learned so far, because I don't think there's too many resources. Like I haven't found a lot of great resources on drawing someone walking out there. So hopefully this will be helpful and add something new to the art tutorial world. Okay. So the main things that we want to focus on, this is going to be like a theoretical portion, and then I'll do a demonstration. We're going to focus on two main poses. So we have, they're easiest to see here and here. So we've got the stepping forward and the lifted leg. Those are kind of the two different poses. So here's the stepping forward. Here I'll do the same symbol, stepping forward. Here's the lifted leg. And then here again is the stepping forward, and here is the lifted leg from 3/4 view. And we also have it here as stepping forward, and here's a lifted leg, but we're not really going to focus on these two views because they have the least interesting silhouette. So you can see that the front arm gets lost in front of the body, and the back arm gets lost behind the body. And it's just like a lot more interesting when you have the legs crossing each other like this. So I'll leave it up here, and also I'll include the reference of me walking. I just did a quick reference video at the end of this, so you can use that to, practice drawing all the in-betweens in different forms. So the two that we want to focus on are this stepping forward and the lifted leg in the back. So there's three main things we want to keep in mind for any of the poses. This is going to hold true for walking. These are like the mechanics of walking. The first is over here, and this is having this contrapposto, where the angle of the shoulders is opposite to the angle of the hips. So they form something like that, and there's the spine in the middle. Now this is quite exaggerated, and the more kind of swagger the character has in their walk, the more exaggerated these angles will be. If you look at the reference video or watch someone walking, it's so subtle. Like you can't really see the tilt in the shoulders and hips, at least I can't. But it's there. And the most important way to remember which way it's tilting is that the foot that's carrying most of the weight, so here you see this one's carrying all the weight because the back foot's off the side, is going to be connected, it's like there's force pushing against the hip because of the weight, and this one's kind of hanging, right? So the side of the body with the leg supporting the body is going to have the higher hip angle. And then once you've got that, the shoulders are opposite. And it creates this squeeze and stretch sides here. So here we see we've got this angle on the hips, and opposite to the shoulder. Here's the supporting leg is in the back, and that gives you that contrapposto, as they call it, stance. You can't really see it as much from the side view, and even in 3/4 view, it's a lot harder to see. You see here the weight is almost evenly distributed, so that contrapposto is going to be a lot less. While here, it would be something like that, but it's hard to tell on the 3/4 view, so it's a little trickier. I think here it's more obvious. I've made that a little more exaggerated so you can see that there. Okay, cool. So that's number one. Number two is knowing that the opposite arm and leg are going to be like swinging together. So this is the green here is the front leg, and the green here is the front arm, but they're opposite. So this is the back leg and the arm, or this is the leg farther away from you, this is the arm closer to you, both swinging forward. This was the leg closer to you, this is the arm farther away, both swinging backwards. So they're counterbalancing each other. You can see I've also indicated that on this figure, where you can see that the purple indicates the leg that's backwards, that's behind, and the arm that's behind, and then this leg that's more forward is associated with this arm that's more forward. And it's actually, it would be even more obvious on the figure right next to it. So you can see this arm's in front, which means this opposite leg is in front. And then, you know, this leg's in back, which means this opposite arm is in back. Okay? And then, so that's the second thing. And the third thing is that the opposite arm and leg will approximately have the same angle. So here you see the upper arm, it's going to be the upper arm and the upper leg, because the bottom arm and bottom leg can swing a little more on this joint, so they might not always line up, but more or less the upper arm and upper leg will, of the opposite limbs, will have that same angle. So you can see the angle here, and then you can see on the other side, it's similar too. It has a similar angle. So remembering these three things from whatever perspective you're looking at or you're drawing from will help to inform the figure and, you know, get that walking pose correct. So let's go ahead and do some demos. We'll start with the side view because I think that's the easiest to understand, and then I think we'll go front view, and then we'll do our 3/4. And I'm definitely no master at this, I'm still learning, but I think I've learned enough to kind of share some helpful things that took me a while to figure out, looking at different sources and looking at reference material. So hopefully this will be a bit of a shortcut for you guys to start getting your figures walking for your anime openings or whatever else you need that have a figure just walking full body. Okay, cool. So let's look at side view. So we'll start off with, I'm not going to talk too much about the structure and stuff because this video is going to be complex enough already, but I have other videos about, you know, gesture drawing and drawing the structure of the body, so you can check those out if you want. So the first thing to think of is there's the center of gravity. So you can imagine, you know, that this is going to be about the same height. Right to the bottom of the pelvis is about halfway down the body. So we can start to get an idea of where we want the legs to be based on that and the measurement of drawing a plumb line right down the center of gravity. So if a person's just standing straight, that's going to, you know, they're going to be centered over this foot. But if they start to walk and the legs are spread out like this, you're going to want about an even distance between the front and left back leg to be able to still feel balanced. So this is quite the stride here, but it does pretty much look balanced because that it's centered between this center point. There's an equidistance for each leg. So that's something to keep in mind. So actually, let's go back to our default standing pose, and we can kind of get an idea of how to draw the first pose will be the one with the foot behind. So it's basically something like that. And you can have a little bit more of a lean forward because it's kind of like when you're walking, you're almost like falling forward and catching yourself repeatedly. So this is very neutral where this leg is just straight up and down, but you could even have it leaning back a little bit. And I know this kind of We'll put our character off center because the center of gravity is going to be right here, which means the character is falling forward, but that's okay because he's about to step forward with this foot and catch himself and subsequently move himself forward. So this is like the basic idea for the stepping forward pose. And then we remember that the angles, first off, the opposite foot and arm will be associated with each other. So here it's not too exciting because remember this angle is going to match roughly the angle of the upper arm on the opposite side. So since this is pretty straight, so will the arm, and same with the other side. So this is a very like neutral place. Let's say we were to adjust this a little bit and make, let's see, how would that be? Maybe this foot is more in front and this one is just lifting off the floor. Maybe the toe is still touching, something like that. Let's get them on the same plane. Something like that maybe. Then you would see a little more. This would match that, and then the back arm is going to be at this angle, so you might just catch a little bit of it coming down like that in the back. Oh, and actually, I've done this, I forgot to make sure that that we have the opposite arms on each side. So actually, let's say this leg is in front, then the back arm will match that, and the front arm will be more like that. So that it'd actually be more, that's correct there. So that's why I like remembering those three rules, the contrapposto, the opposite arm and leg, and then the alignment, the angles, the angles of these upper parts of the limbs matching up are really important to remember, because otherwise, at least for me, I often get confused about which leg is where and what's doing what. So that's the leg back pose, and then for the leg forward pose on the side view, we'll remember to keep that plumb line in the center, and you start to get like a feel for it once you do, and you don't have to always draw it out, but it can be helpful to draw it out at first. So here the heel is just about to touch the ground, and then this one might be like that, or it might actually be on the toes like that. And then we've got, so let's say this is the front foot again, and we know that this arm will match that angle, and the back arm will match the front leg angle, something like that. I'm going to keep things really like, we're just kind of focusing on the structure. I'm not going to get too much into details because I want to keep this video a reasonable length. So we'll just leave it, excuse me, we'll just leave it at that for now. Excuse me. And move on to the front view, which is going to be a little bit trickier even. So we can move this over to the side here. And then we have some space for the front view. So the front view is where you're going to see this contrapposto. And I think like my favorite place to start is to put down the leg that's going to be carrying the weight. So, and then put in the angle of the hips. And then we'll have the opposite angle for the shoulders. And then the head is going to be straight up and down. Let's make this a little bit smaller, move that there. Okay, and then we can decide here whether we want this to be the foot coming forward or the foot coming back. At this point, we haven't committed to anything. So let's go ahead and leave it with the foot going back there. So you can see there's this foreshortening where, you know, we're looking at at that sort of thing. So this part is a lot shorter here, and then you're seeing the top of the foot. And so that's here. So that would be like the toes down there. So it's using just U shapes, you can really indicate that pretty decently. As you see here, you can kind of make that out, and you can even shade these a little bit to show that they're going into the back if you want. And then we have connecting here. So we know this leg is going towards the back, so that means this arm on the opposite side is going to be moving more backwards, and this arm is going to be in the front. Sometimes it can overlap to show that it's in the front a little bit there. When you're doing a more, like if you exaggerate this kind of thing, you'll get this much more cartoony pose. So I'll give you an example of what that might look like. So here, see this arm's in the front, and this arm's going way back like that. And then we would have this leg in the front, and then you can kind of open it up and do something like that. See, so you're using the same principles, but really exaggerating them to get a sense of, to get this like cartoony, over the top vibe. So let's keep this guy over there because he's a nice little reference. We'll move you over here, buddy. And then let's do our front view, but with the leg stepping forward. So you know what, we'll do the exact same thing to get practice. So we'll start off with the same leg as the foundation, as the support leg. Okay. And then we will, here that seems a little short. I'm gonna make it a little longer. So we'll kind of follow the same general procedure. Like this. Okay, and then with this foot, we kind of want it to be coming towards the center. So there's almost like this center line. I'll show you what I mean in this animation. So you see that line in the center of the feet? That's kind of basically the inside of the heels of both legs kind of stay, or the inside of both feet, sorry, basically stay along that line. So when I have the front leg coming forward, I kind of imagine that inner line, and I bring the leg to meet that, and it's also going to be a little bit below because it's coming forward in space. And there's also, so this is a little more subtle, but there's also a tilt where the outside of the heel is touching. So if it's this leg, the outside of the heel is actually touching the floor first. It's really weird drawing the foot from this angle, so you'll see like the bottom of the foot, something like that. So there's this tilting like that, and then there's also the front of the foot lifted up. So one easy way to do that in a more cartoony perspective is just to draw like some kind of shape like this. And it'll start to give you an idea, and you kind of want to mess around until you get it looking right. But another thing I used is this kind of triangle shape. And then another box for the heel. So you got this triangle shape that's leaning in the right direction. So this is one of the things you'll have to like look at reference and play around with and practice. If I figure out a really simplified way of getting this foot looking like that, then I'll let you know. One thing you can use is the foot method that I shared in another video, where like you just use this triangle shape and this shape and connect them. So instead you use the triangle shape, and then you move this shape up here, and that gives you kind of like the foot coming up at an angle. It doesn't work as well, but it still works pretty decently. So I would recommend, if you're looking for a method to try to do that to start off with. But yeah, you'll just have to kind of play around and figure out how to do that for now. And like I said, if I figure out a even better method, I will make a future video on that. And so you see you've got this leg coming forward, and this one actually, I'm going to move it a little bit higher even because I want it looking further back, like that. Cool. And then we've got to remember, so this is the front leg, so that means this will be the front arm this time. Something like that. And then this is the back leg, so this will be the back arm. And that will give us our basic like stepping forward walking pose from front view. Cool. You can also kind of try to keep in mind these three-dimensional form that the character is in, or the three-dimensional plane that it's walking upon. So drawing a little 3D kind of flat square like that can be helpful. All right, it looks like we'll need another layer for our 3/4 view. So moving on to the 3/4 view, let's put in the upper body, pretty straightforward. And we can add the tilts. So I wanted to, let me go check my reference real quick to make sure I'm doing the right one. So I want to do the closer leg forward. So I think we'll start with this one all the way on the right. So the closer leg is forward, which means that the tilt is probably more on the back leg, but more neutral now because the weight's almost evenly distributed. We do something like that. This leg is coming forward, so we could kind of indicate this area like that and have the leg coming forward, and think of it in these cone shapes. And then, as I mentioned before, it's rotated outward, so it might be tempting to put the foot like this, which wouldn't look terrible, but it's actually rotated more outwards. So it's almost going to be looking towards you. You see that? That might be a little bit too much of the bottom leg showing. And it could even be looking almost directly at you at this angle, depending on how the person's walking. I don't know if that's coming through very clearly, but you know, it's kind of like almost looking right at you. See what I mean? And then you see this tilt where the outside of the heel is the part touching the floor first. And then on this side, remember we've got some kind of, what would the 3D plane look like for this? Hold on, let's do it. Would it be like that? Oh, I'm having trouble visualizing that. Okay, well let's just put the leg behind like this. And you'd be surprised at how high up it can be. You know, this is where you've got to kind of experiment and figure it out. That looks a little short to me, but you know, we'd be looking at something like that. No, that looks a little too short. Like I said, I'm still kind of figuring this out myself, so you'll have to get the details down on your own. I think this one just needs to be a little bit longer, but I think this will be a good starting point. And you can look at references and other studies to get the details. So you've got something like that, right? And then this upper body is totally out of proportion, but that's fine. I won't worry about that right now. So let's look at all our other two rules. So we've already got the contrapposto. Then the second thing is that the opposite arm and leg are going to be the ones forward. So this is going to be the forward leg. So on the opposite side, here's the arm, and it'll follow the angle. The upper arm will follow the angle of the upper leg. And same here. So upper arm following the angle of the upper leg on this side and going backwards because it's matching that other side. Okay, so I wouldn't say this is a roaring success, but you know, you get the idea I think if we make the legs longer, it'll look a lot better. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, that'll give you a basic idea of how to do that walking angle. And so the last one is going to be the same thing, but with the foot back. So let's get our 3/4 view. And we want, actually I'm going to switch it so that the root leg is in front. So see, we've switched it because we will know that this is going to be the stabilizing leg. And then we want it to be, that's going to have the high point on the hip. And then the other leg is going to come down and go behind like this. And just hang back. Something like that. And then we have, this is the back leg, so this will be the back arm. There's not too much of an angle. Those angles are similar, so let's just, and then the front leg to be the front arm, but again, it's not really that far forward because it's kind of in that middle, middle area where it's about to swing. It's not as exaggerated. So it might be something like that, pretty simply. So I think that's it for now. Again, I might revisit walking and get into the subtler details once I've grasped an even deeper mastery of it, but I want to move on to running and swinging and jumping and all the other dynamic poses. So there will be videos on all those coming up. But yeah, also just a reminder that I'm doing this one-on-one art tutoring. So if you're interested in that, check out the link in the description. And aside from that, I just hope that this video has imbued you with a bit more pencil power. All right.
Just go back the other way one more time. Cool.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
Learning how to draw people walking. We got him walking too, so that's good. In case he's wondering.